I'm Kayla Matthews, Senior Fashion and Market Director at Vogue Australia, and today I'm joined by Isabella Mamis, Fashion Assistant, and Alice Birrell, Fashion Features Director, and we're here to talk all things Met Gala 2024. So I think the first look that we all have to talk about is Gwendolyn Christie, one of the first arrivals and the host of the live stream.
She looked amazing, and I think from the get-go we all marked her down as one of our absolute favourite looks. She's in Maison Margiela Artisanal. We loved that she subtly nodded to the theme, which is of course Garden of Time, in a blood orange velvet. So she particularly chose this shade as a subtle nod to the world of nature, but without being too obvious. And I think the thing I loved about it was just how lightweight that beautiful crinoline couture fabric that's being used on her opera cape, which would traditionally be quite heavy. So it's kind of this idea of the ephemeral and lightness, and I think it just really set the tone for the red carpet.
I think another amazing John Galliano presence was Bad Bunny, a co-chair of this year's event. I think this is perfectly encapsulates how a male really has taken the theme on board. It's a silk kind of corset under this beautiful jacket, and I love that he's carrying a bouquet of flowers in the same material as the suit jacket, and finish off perfectly with a tabby, which obviously is on everyone's must-want list.
And I think there's also, when we go into this detail here, I love these chalk lines, the tailor's chalk that's been left deliberately by John Galliano on the clothes. It kind of is that bit of a nod to something being unfinished, maybe something unravelling, which that very impactful collection from earlier this year that everybody was talking about had that layer kind of running throughout, and I think this will play into many of the other outfits we're about to talk about.
Bella, who was one of your favourites from the Met Gala?
Off the bat, Taylor Russell in Loewe for her debut at the Met Gala is just iconic in my opinion. She's got this 3D piece that was moulded to her body. It is meant to look like wood. She quoted herself that she has always wanted to look like a tree, so this is her moment. And I think that J.W. Anderson blurs the lines between real and surreal so well, and it really is encapsulated in this piece where he's used, I think it was
real wood,
yeah, which is just incredible and shows how artisanal the piece really is. He's such a talent.
And I think that attention to the craftsmanship, when we're talking about the idea of marquetry, and I think those are pieces of wood that are genuinely inlaid into this amazing bodice, is really all that his work is, not all that his work is about, but a huge part of his work is about honouring craftsmanship and these incredible techniques that, I guess with the progression of time, with a link back to the theme, are sometimes lost. So I think that this is a beautiful way to do that.
And Loewe dressed so many amazing talent for this year's Met Gala, given the partnership with the brand. In the Met Gala this year. Another person is Omar Apollo that wore the Loewe.
Yeah, he was wearing the most gorgeous suit jacket that had this embellished peak lapel that had these mirrored pieces that I think just stands out. When you see, I think for men especially attending a Met Gala, they want to do something different, and this is just the perfect nod to that. I love how the brooches on his collar are actually pieces that we can find from the SS24 Loewe collection. There's like this gorgeous woman's wear piece that's a top made completely out of those brooches. So for him to be wearing that on his lapel is quite chic.
Another favourite that was dressed by Loewe is Greta Lee. I think this dress was absolutely divine. The chantilly lace is heavenly, and matched with that kind of armoured bodice that we saw in, was it SS23 or SS24?
Yeah.
SS23. So I think it's a real kind of a nod to those house codes that Jonathan Anderson is creating, and I think just the perfect kind of makeup look just finishes off this kind of heavenly, otherworldly look from Greta.
I think we're seeing so many florals, and it's really nice to see them in such a delicate, beautiful, almost bridal way.
For sure. Dream bridal dress.
Dream bridal dress.
Someone I loved, speaking of white dresses, was Nicole, of course, our very own Nicole in Balenciaga. So beautiful, very elegant. I think the theme here, it's not so obvious, but I think I love the way that she's interpreted it, which is, you know, the exhibition theme is called Sleeping Beauty's Reawakening Fashion. So the Met's beautiful archival pieces that have been selected. Some of them are so old and so delicate they need to be displayed lying down so as to not kind of mishandle them or cause any damage, and she's kind of taken this idea and, along with Balenciaga's Demna, revived a 1951 design that was originally worn by American model Dorian Lee in a beautiful Richard Avedon image, and it's just been reinterpreted and updated, but totally true, I think, to the Balenciaga house codes. And Cristobal, his favourite colour of course was black, and they've taken that idea but emphasised this incredible front panel, which is actually made with 150 metres of, I'm going to say some numbers now, 150 metres of hand-frayed organza, and it took 800 hours of embroidery to achieve. So the craftsmanship in this is just incredible and very much true to the idea of a dress from a bygone era that's been given a new life. So I think that ties into the theme in a subtle but very appropriate way, in my opinion.
Sure.
And speaking of another amazing dresses, Amelia Gray in Jun Takahashi's Undercover. I think this was one of my favourite looks from the SS23 collections overall. This dress kind of came out as the finale. It's one of three, and it actually lights up from the inside. It's got floral details, and I think a butterfly was even shown on the runway. Not too sure if Amelia had that included in the look, but I just think that this was one of the looks that I really wanted to see given the Met Gala theme this year. So I'm glad that someone like Amelia kind of took that and ran with it.
Totally. It's brave and it's bold, and I hope on the dance floor right now, because we're kind of in that time of the night over in New York, she's lighting up somewhere and turning on the light up lights. But I think it does that drama and that volume in a way that's not, you know, relying on a sweeping train, but it's fun, it's youthful and short, and it looks really good.
Another one of my favourites would have to be Gigi Hadid, who is wearing the most fantastic Tom Brown dress that is two pieces. So there's kind of this suit jacket that's very deconstructed and falls into the trail of the dress. I know that there's been over 13,000 hours worked on just the beading alone on this piece.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, with 70, like a team of 70 people have worked on this dress, and also probably removing that later to dance, because there is a dress underneath that's completely
corseted all the way down the back, right? Which is beautiful. So it's got that transformability, which also nods to the theme, I think. But it's, we need to see those pictures next.
Speaking of deconstructed, Chloe
Sevigny. I feel she was a bit of a sleeper favourite. She kind of snuck into the red carpet, and this isn't the most dramatic piece. It's, you know, it's not bold colour, it's nothing that's smacking you in the face, but I think the subtle layering here, and knowing the designer Dilara Findicoglu and her kind of purpose, her sense of strong femininity and breaking down convention and transcending barriers, which I think is symbolised in this corset that's ripped open, you know, she's not laced in, she's not restricted or confined, is a really subtle nod to that. And I think that the fraying of those edges, the kind of worn-in feeling, is a nod to time and the passage of time, but in a nice way that's not, as I said, not super obvious. But I love this. I think Chloe just goes her own way, and it's one of my favourites.
And I heard her making a comment about her kind of nod to the Victorian mourning hair as well, which I really loved. It's an all-in outfit.
Totally, and I think those lockets of hair that have those plaited, and she wore them kind of around her ear, but it's a slight little gothic dark nod to the dark side of like a life cycle and the cyclical nature of things decaying and then coming to life again. So that was also a nice layered meaning for me, which I loved.
And speaking of which, if we're speaking about that kind of decaying edging, I just loved Wisdom K in Robert Woon Couture. This look is just amazing in the fact that it's like that very hyper color red, but I guess it was borrowed from the SS23 Scorched Bride look, and the burnt marks were actually used creating prints and dyes in addition to actually being scorched material, which I think is super interesting. And I love that he's paired it with this beautiful Elsa Peretti for Tiffany & Co. Scorpion necklace. I think it's just yeah, a
It's
wonderful.
a little bit of darkness, right?
Yeah.
The sting in nature.
Yes, among all of the floral looks, I think this is a really interesting one. So a total gear shift coming from Wisdom K is definitely Michelle Williams, who I know is one of your favourites from the Met Gala.
I feel like she does no wrong when she walks a red carpet, but here she has donned the SS24 Chanel Couture Bride, which is such an iconic end to a runway always for Chanel, but she just looks so ethereal and beautiful, and I think she's got this gorgeous new pixie cut that's pink, and it's just the perfect nod to the theme for the night.
Super romantic, so light. It's almost like air in a dress. The Demi Moore piece. This was a Harris Reed piece that I loved, and it had these the feathers coming out here, which are kind of hand cut into what looks like spears, and I think that really represents the rose's thorns and that darker side of something so beautiful like these flowers that are on this sculptural piece. I think this came from his collection, or it's a modification of a piece from his collection earlier this year. It's made out of, which is another detail that is just really beautiful. It's old vintage silk and hand painted, and I think hand embroidered wallpaper, which he's somehow lifted by, I think that he was sponged the back off and reapplied to the garment. So it's just
incredible.
so painstaking, yeah, and just beautiful, and giving new life again to something without, there's just so many layers of meaning, but I just thought she looked so good in this.
And what is this beautiful necklace that Demi wore?
Yes, she was wearing the most beautiful necklace. I think it was an unseen high jewellery piece by Cartier that was inspired by a dandelion, so kind of blowing in the wind and things moving and not being so permanent. So I thought that was really beautiful. And I think Harris Reed used a paper cutout of it when he was designing the dress, because you can't always have access to those kinds of jewels, and he designed around that paper cutout. So I mean, it's just such the attention, the hard work that goes into these pieces is amazing.
Yeah, speaking of hard work, I think we all need to discuss Tyler's look from Balmain.
So good.
The best.
It was Tyler's first time at the Met, and I think she just made such a daring choice, and it really paid off. Designed by Olivia Roosting, I think this is actual sand.
It's like she's coming out of a sand dune.
Or her hourglass clutch that she's also carrying. Apparently the mould of this dress was taken a couple of months ago, and you could just imagine the detail that went into it. I did see footage of her. I think she had to get carried up the stairs, but I think it's totally well worth it. The micro crystal studs and the 3 colours of actual sand really just created the most beautiful optical kind of illusion.
And what a good representation of time and time passing. But yeah, I think she's nailed that in theme and look for sure.
Yeah, and I love the touches of sand on her shoulders and hands. I think it was kind of
really leans into like that decaying that we were speaking about earlier, because I feel like that's a really nice tie back to that Sleeping Beauty.
And speaking of fairy tales and the idea of classic fairy tales, I think the next person that we, just had to include, but also wanted to discuss, was Lana Del Rey in Amazing Alexander McQueen by new creative director Sean McGeer. As soon as everyone saw this, we all thought of the fall 2006 runway, which was under original designer Lee McQueen. And it's an incredible collection. A lot of people know it, of course, but it was an homage to the widows of Culloden in Scotland, and it's kind of this idea, the battle between the Scottish and the English, and that a lot of people were left, heartbroken without their partners, and it was a really quite stark and beautiful and emotional collection, and the original look is quite similar to this, but I think the idea of reviving a Sleeping Beauty is embodied by this look, because it's a recreation, it's got a twist, it's slightly more, fairy tale. I think they talked about the idea of being lost in the forest, so different to Lee McQueen, but it's a nice representation.
I love Lana's single rose as well. Finishes off the look.
Little romantic gesture.
I think the last person who made a massive entrance for me was definitely Cardi B.
Yes.
I feel like shut down the Met Gala steps. She physically no one could walk around that, basically.
She turned the Met Gala steps from green to black, for sure.
Completely. She's wearing this gorgeous Giambattista Valli dress that just obviously has hundreds of meters of tulle, and I think in the perfect Cardi B way, really took that dark fantasy and made it her own, and is kind of playing a villain here almost. It's really...
Yeah, it's a little palette cleanser to
Yeah.
all the sweet, pretty florals. I think she's taken it in that way of knowing that there's different facets of the garden. There's darkness, and it
There's
totally
drama.
sucks. Yeah, drama. It sucks the light in. It's just, you kind of can't miss it.
I feel like that was a really good way to end the red carpet. Like, she was kind of the last person we saw on the live stream, and it was the perfect little final bold mic
Full
drop.
stop.
Yeah, full stop. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Please visit vogue.com.au for all of the looks in detail.